everyone. So I would like to welcome each and everyone here present to yet another beautiful topic of tropisms. So tropisms as a topic is quite examinable, and I think for those of us who might have a privilege of going through the past papers, you understand what I mean, you appreciate what I mean. So I would encourage each and everyone here that we, pay closer attention to whatever things that are to be discussed here. So you're with me, Zaitwa Chikwatula, as your instructor. And please, 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 please feel free to ask questions wherever you feel like you need clarity. Okay, so wherever you need clarification, please feel free to ask a question. I will clarify. I would be willing actually to help you with that. So by the end of this topic, by the end of this lesson, I would want us to be able actually to explain the meaning of tropisms and describe the types of tropisms that are there. And also we should know how to carry out the investigations on tropisms, and also to explain how tropisms work. This is actually quite important because oftentimes we find ourselves forgetting stuff because we tend to memorize stuff quite a lot, right? So if we understand the basic principles, if we understand, what really happens for there to be this whole thing, the tropism thing, irrespective of the type of tropism that is there, if we understand the principles, we'll be able to apply. And sitingama iwale, pafu these things. So I don't want you to be clamming. No, I want you to understand the principles of tropisms. In doing that, you will be able to retain as much information as possible. Trust me on that one. So, by definition, we need to understand that tropism, the word tropism, comes from a Greek word, tropos, right? So this word means to turn, okay, to turn. So I think nowadays, for us to have this good picture, to turn kulingati kuyangana, right? Kutembenuka. But then with the most famous song, the current famous song that is there, that is out there, yangana yangana. That's how you should be looking at it, right? Meaning the plants themselves also turn. Amayangana now also, right? So the turning can either be towards something or it can be away from something, and that's how this whole thing works, right? So when you're looking at the word tropism, it's coming from a Greek word tropos, which means to turn, yangana yangana, right? But then the turning can be either towards something, towards a stimulus, or it can be away from the stimulus. That's how we should be looking at it. In other words, if you were to look at tropism, this is just like a growth response, either towards or away from a stimulus coming from one direction. So it's a directional growth response towards or away from a stimulus, all right? So you need to understand that if it happens to say the growth response is happening towards a stimulus, that is called positive tropism, regardless of the type of tropism that is there. But in as much as the growth response or the directional growth response is towards the stimulus, it's called a positive tropism. But if it happens to say the growth response is away from the stimulus, it's called negative tropism. I think we're together on that one, right? Yeah. So if you still remember quite well, we talked about like on the objectives, we want to be able to explain the types of tropisms that are there. So this slide is just telling us the types of tropisms that are there. So you can have this one, like the first one is phototropism. Phototropism. And then we have geotropism. We have hydrotropism. And we have thigmotropism. But then the other researchers, they like geotropism is also referred to gravitropism, right? So you can just take note of that, gravitropism. So starting with phototropism, remember we said tropism is coming from a Greek word tropos, right? In other words, phototropism is just a combination of two words that are forming this word phototropism. So we have tropos, which means to turn, exactly. So we have to turn. So remember, it's either towards or away from the stimulus. And we have the other word, photo, light, right? So I think that's actually simple, right? So in other words, if you are to combine this thing, like, phototropism, okay, you will see that we can come to a conclusion that this is the movement or a growth response either towards or away from light. You get the point, right? So if it happens to say the growth is towards the light, of which it's quite easier for us to appreciate this in the in the shoots of the plants, right? The shoots show the positive phototropism, meaning they tend to respond, or they move towards where there is light. Okay, so that's positive phototropism. But if it happens to say there is growth response away from the light, that's called a negative phototropism, of which we will be able to appreciate this in the roots, because the roots tend to exhibit the negative phototropism, meaning the roots grow away from the light. All right, so this one is actually important. How important is it? Because it increases the probability of the stems and the leaves to intercept light for photosynthesis. We understand that plants make their own food, right? So for this reason, they need to make sure that they create an environment where it will favor this photosynthesis, whereby you're having production of glucose from have carbon dioxide, water in the presence of sunlight as well. So they should be able to expose the leaves, the stems and the leaves, especially the leaves, should be exposed to sunlight so that they should make their own food. Okay, so that's why they're growing towards light, and I think you can appreciate this. And the roots, it's also important because the roots obtain water and dissolved minerals they need. That's why they're growing away from the stimulus, which is light. That's why they're going down, because they would want to absorb this water that is used for photosynthesis as well, right? And also they should be able to absorb the dissolved minerals they need for growth. So this is just a pictorial depiction of phototropism. So as you can see, we're assuming to say we have two plants. We have two plants. So plant A, which is on the left, which is on the left, like in a closed window. So we have a closed window, meaning there is no light that is coming. There is no light that is coming, and it's in dark. So if you were to observe how this plant will be growing, you see that, okay, it will be growing straight. It will be growing straight because there is no light that is detected by the shoots or by the leaves, especially by the shoots, okay? So there is no light that is perceived by the shoots, and as a result, it will be growing, it will be growing straight like that. But then, in the picture that is in the open window thing, or the one on the right, have you seen what is happening? So we have the light that is coming from one direction. And what is happening? So the shoots are able to sense that, to perceive that. So remember, on the properties of the living organisms, we say there is sensitivity, right? Sensitivity, and apart from sensitivity, there is movement. So in this case, the plant on the right has sensed the light that is coming from one direction. I think we're together on that one, right? So it has managed to sense the light that is coming from one direction, and this has made it to bend towards it. So there is movement, but which is kind of subtle, right? So in other words, this is showing positive phototropism, meaning the plant is going towards where the stimulus is. This is positive phototropism. I think we're able to appreciate what really happens. That's phototropism. And then we have another type of tropism here, and this is geotropism. Geotropism. So as usual, we're trying to split it. Geo means earth, right? And tropos, remember, we've established here already that it means to turn, right? To turn either away or towards the stimulus, right? Remember, I said geotropism, like other literatures, are also calling it gravitropism, right? Meaning it's something to do with gravity. Remember, so in other words, this is just response of plants to gravitational pull. So remember, gravitational pull, what is happening is in gravitational pull, the force is trying to pull the objects towards the center of the earth, right? So it's trying to make the objects stay on earth. That's the gravitation, the effect of the gravitational pull. That's why there is geo, there is earth, and there is to turn. So if you were to look at it, the plants, like, let's say the seedlings and all that, the radicals show positive geotropisms as it grows towards the force of gravity. So this one is kind of different from the plumu. Yeah, others I know, others call it plumule, right? So yeah, it's kind of different from the plumu, because the plumu, they tend to experience or to exhibit actually the negative geotropism, meaning they don't go down the earth, they don't go down the ground, okay? They actually go upward for a reason. So remember, the radicals are the ones that are just like the young roots, right? So these guys, let's say if you're growing a plant, you're growing this seedling rather, and then they are horizontal. They are horizontal, meaning that the gravity is striking all of them at uniformly, right? So both the plumu and also have the radical. But after some time, you will see that the radical or the radical part will be growing down into the ground, right? It will be growing down into the ground, whilst the plumu or the rest of the thing will be going up, right? So in this case, the plumu shows a negative geotropism because it's growing away from the ground, gravity, But the radical is showing a positive geotropism. That's why it's growing down with respect to the gravity. In other words, it's trying to move the cellular gravity, right? So it's trying to respect the gravity, but this other one, the plumu, is going against gravity. So this one is actually also important because the roots will more likely counter the minerals and waters, just like the same thing with the phototropism, right? And the stems and the leaves are able to intercept light as well. So this is just the pictorial depiction actually of what it is when it comes to geotropism. So have you seen what is happening? So we have this plant, if it is, let's say, in a verse like this, and then it's upright, we can't be able to really appreciate how geotropism works because, it's just like, the gravity thing, it's just like striking all the column of airs, or it's just pushing on it the way it is, of which we can't appreciate really what happens. So for us to do this, we need to tilt the verse or the the plant, right? So we need to make it horizontal for a reason, right? So as for us to be able to appreciate what really happens, because gravity, remember, makes the objects to stay down the earth, right? Because the expectation maybe would be like, okay, if we were to put it horizontally, maybe the plant will be like, the roots will be growing horizontal as well, right? And the rest of the thing, the shoot, will be growing maybe horizontal as well. But that's not what is happening. So it's like the shoot is respecting the phototropism, so there is positive phototropism, and there is, at the same time, there is negative geotropism. But have you seen what is happening to the roots? The roots, instead of growing horizontally, they're growing down, meaning they're respecting what? Respecting gravity, right? So they're respecting gravity. So as we go along with the presentation, remember, the fourth objective was for us to understand what really happens for there to be, for the tropism to occur, irrespective of the type that we're dealing with, right? So that's why you see the roots are growing down, bending down, even though the verse itself is horizontally oriented. So another one is the thigmotropism. So if we try to split it further, thigma means touch, and tropos, remember, is to turn, right? So in other words, we're just so much interested in the movement or the response of plants to touch, right? Yeah, so this one is important because you can be able to appreciate this one in tendrils, because it allows plants to climb objects and increase the chances of intercepting light for photosynthesis. For example, these things that you can see here, we have Nkwani, right? So we have the tendrils that are, trying to circle around the objects so that they should also be able to expose the leaves, for photosynthesis, and it also even on the right here, right? So yes, for photosynthesis, and also at the same time for support. And I think ena madzalapo so nyemba zauchen zijazoena kuti zimatha kuyanga. So it is the very same thing. That's thigmotropism. So what happens is that we will understand as we go along with the presentation on how this thing happens, or this thing occurs for there to be the thigmotropism. All right. So the law of the auxins or the hormones and all that, as we've already established, that the hormones are the ones that are trying to drive whatever things that are happening here. All right. Yeah. So another part is the hydrotropism. So remember, hydro. Sorry, there's a typo, but it's coming from two words: hydro, meaning water, right? Hydro, water, and then remember, tropism is to turn, right? So, in other words, if we were to try to combine these things, it's like we're looking at the growth response of the roots, but towards water in the soil. So plants are actually attracted to good stuff. Always they get attracted to good stuff, So remember, we said if you were to look at tropism, it's like one way in which the plants are trying to survive. They're trying to adapt in the environment in which they are living. So we know that plants cannot survive if there is no water, right? So if there is no water, they can't survive at all. So they need water for that. So the roots are trying to exhibit that sort of, property, whereby we have the roots that are growing towards where there is water. So it's quite important because it gives the ability of the roots to bend and also grow towards the moisture, towards moisture gradient. And it's essential because plants need water to grow. And we also know that, remember, water is responsible for photosynthesis. Remember, water is really important for photosynthesis. You know already what happens during those two stages. We have the light stage and the dark stage of the photosynthesis thing. So in other words, hydrotropism, we're looking at the direction of growth response of the roots towards water, right? So meaning, if the roots are going towards the water, or in other words, where there is water, that's where there is stimulus, right? Because the moisture will be going to the roots, and these, or the plant will be able to sense, or the roots will be able to sense, to say, I think there is something that I can use for me to survive. Otherwise, I'll die here, right? I will die. So it has to adapt to that. So it extends the roots, it makes sure that the roots tend to shift to that side where there is water. That's hydrotropism. So we have positive hydrotropism. So this one is just, a pictorial depiction as well that is trying to show what really happens. All right. So oftentimes we know the water. Let's say if you were to do this, we have that case, right? So it's containing a beautiful plant with a flower, right? And then have you seen where the water is? So it's down. And have you seen how the roots are growing? Okay, so the roots are trying to follow wherever there is water, because it needs that water. Because without that water, it won't survive. And even for us, right? It's just like, a mechanism, like even for animals, animals, they try to search wherever there is water. But then because the plants cannot move, like, the whole of the plant cannot move, it uses the roots to sense where there is water. All right. So it extends the roots to grow towards where there is water. So in this case, change in the levels of water, that's the stimulus. Right. So we're having another part on the right, whereby we're having the plant, but then it has been deprived of the water, like, the whole of the soil has been deprived of water, but then the water has just been put on the right side. And have you seen how the roots are growing? Because the plant is able to sense, as one of the properties of the living organisms. So it's able to sense, to say, okay, I really need water, but then on my left there is no water. Right? Down here there is no water, and then the water is on the right. Okay, so what should we do? All right, so let's increase our chances of survival. Let's extend the roots there, right? Let's extend our roots there because we should be able to absorb it. That's all. Oh, it has got a lot of nutrients. It has got a lot of minerals as well there, right? The dissolved minerals. That's why you're saying the roots extending all the way to where the stimulus is coming from. That's a positive hydrotropism.